Welcome to Behind the Wines, a freshly bottled podcast about Australian wine, the wines we love, and the people behind them. My mission is simple. I want to get down into the cellar with sommeliers, stomp some grapes with winemakers, and have chats with our finest critics, growers, retailers, and chefs. Today's episode comes from the stylish tasting room at PS Wine Selections in central Camberwell, Melbourne, where we are joined by Lisa Cardelli, award-winning wine writer, educator, judge and communicator. Born in Tuscany and now calling Melbourne home, Lisa has done it all, from working the floor as a sommelier to judging wine shows and to writing for some of Australia's most influential wine publications. With a deep passion for education and a sharp storytelling voice, Lisa is one of the most respected communicators in Australian wine. So join us for a life well poured. Welcome to Behind the Wines, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you.
What brought you from Tuscany to Australia and what made you stay?
Yeah, really good question. So it all started back when I was working for Disney back in Florida, and it was about a year program, and we had a special working visa for that. And obviously I met with many different hospitality professionals, not just from Italy, but from all around the world. And naturally we bond really well together, especially with Italian and French. Being there surrounded by all these different people from hospitality all around the world, and listening to some of them, they had some experience with wine and basic things like they told me how to open a bottle of wine under cork, how to present wine at the table, what was behind the wine label. So at the end of the year, I thought, maybe I want to investigate a little bit more this wine thing. So I came back to Tuscany while my sister, because I was traveling with my sister as well, decided to stay in New York. And I enrolled in a sommelier course with the Italian Sommelier Association. And from the get-go, I loved it. I remember the first session was on winemaking, and it was a quite heavy subject, but I loved it. And obviously the moderator was amazing, and so that helped as well. From there, I started with the sommelier education as well as working in restaurants. And I suppose I always wanted to go back overseas, because after a year in US, going back to the small village in Tuscany wasn't feeling right anymore. I really struggled to settle back. And I've always been a person with a very open-minded that like to travel, to speak a different language, to know different cultures. So I really found it difficult to settle back. So I knew some people from my American experience that they spent a couple of years in Australia with a working holiday visa. And so I applied and And so me and my partner, we arrived here in 2009. We already had a connection thanks to an Australian woman that I met in Lucca, where I was studying this sommelier course, addressed me to the right people here in Australia, which was Pilo at Freshwater in Sydney. And so I started from there. And head sommelier of the restaurant was a WSET Educator. And so I enrolled in WSET, started with level 2 with him. And then, I progressed level 3, then diploma, and I became wine educator myself through WSET.
You've worn so many hats in the industry. You've worked as sommelier, wine buyer, educator, and writer. What thread connects them all for you? And which role has shaped you the most?
There is an element of communication in all of them. And I think, obviously, not just for the longer time, but also for the impact hospitality shaped me the most. I've always thought I will encourage my son when he grows up and he wants to go to university to have a side job in hospitality, because it can teach you so much. Might be a bit rhetoric to say the school of life. The things that I learned in hospitality, I would have never, ever learned anywhere else. Maybe hate it or you love it, doesn't matter, because there were moments where I really hate it. Not just that, you don't have weekends, you don't have holidays, you finish late at night. But on the flip side, there is so much that you can learn professionally as a human being that, I can still, take all the lessons from what I learned in over 10 years in hospitality.
You've written for Halliday, WinePilot, and the Law Institute Journal. What's the key to writing about wine in a way that resonates?
I think for any writing job and journalism job, you have to know your audience. So you have to understand first who is your audience. So you have to have a knowledge who is reading Halliday, who is reading WinePilot, and obviously it's easy to understand who is reading Law Institute or Victoria Journal, but if you don't speak directly to the audience, that's where you're already lost. I read a lot other people reviews and wine stories, and some are amazingly technical and they have this beautiful prose, this rich vocabulary, but then I wonder, does the reader really understand what you're trying to communicate, or you are writing more for the winemaker? So I think I prefer to write for the large audience. And so where a WinePilot suit for me, it's because it's for everyone. It's open to everyone. So yes, I can add technical terms in my review, but I tend to be more narrative, something that stick with the audience a little bit better. The way I describe the wine is that, wine at the end of the day is not just a beverage. It's a story in a bottle. The person that made the wine, you have to respect it, even if it's a bronze or silver. So why is a bronze? Why is a silver? What's not there that it doesn't make it as a gold? But you have to explain. And that's something that I've learned not just from Len Evans, but from our course through the AWRI in Adelaide. We did this course over 4 days, and I remember the tutor really want us to write extensive tasting notes even on bronze or no medal wine, and some people was like, what's the point? If it's 83, what do I need to write? It's faulty. But they want us to describe the wine, what it was, even if it was 83 or 95, doesn't matter.
How do you balance technical knowledge with storytelling when reviewing wines?
It all depends if it's a very important wine, a classic wine, or a wine with a rich history behind from a single vineyard that it's iconic. You have to have those things because you have to celebrate as well the wine. And sometimes I joke with other people that review the wine, and I say if I had too many technical notes in there, it's because I don't have much to say about the wine, and that's terrible. But obviously if oak has been used, you have to add that because some people love that. Some people like those butterscotch, coconut flavors and aromas, and people understand oak more and more. Actually, when I work in restaurants, you have customer coming in and asking for buttery Chardonnay, so they have that concept. But I still a bit doubtful that tell people wine has been gone through malolactic fermentation or has a partial old bunch. I'm a bit doubtful that people will totally understand, the readers at large will totally understand what I'm meaning. So if I had those things, I will quickly explain what I mean. And that's come also from my teaching background. You always have to imply that the reader doesn't know what you're talking about.
Do you see yourself then more as a journalist, a storyteller, or an advocate for wine?
That's a good question. I like to think a storyteller, but I think it's a bit too early for me. I haven't done it for long enough. I started 2.5 years. So I think at the moment I'm a journalist. I understand more and more the technical side of journalism and what I have to do. But, I'm still progressing. So I'm aiming to become a storyteller.
What's been your favourite article to write so far and why?
I think the one where I connected the most and where I've had the feeling that I was starting to develop my own voice was my story about Brettanomyces, which was the finalist of last year Wine Communicator of Australia, because it's the things that draw from my roots, from my Tuscan roots, and is something that, if you read the story, the first part trace back to when I was in Tuscany and I used to drink wine heavily affected from Brettanomyces, and I didn't even thought about it was Brettanomyces. So coming here where Brettanomyces is a kind of no, it was to me quite funny in a good way, not in a bad way. And I see both sides now, but I thought there is a story to tell and it would be interesting to show both sides. And it's not a quite popular thing to talk about it in wine in Australia. So I thought that would be hilarious to talk about Brettanomyces in a country that has done a lot to take out Brettanomyces from the wine. And yeah, it was very interesting to interview lots of different people from Australia, overseas, and try to get opinion from both sides.
You're a WSET educator with a background in early childcare. How has that shaped your teaching style?
Obviously, I've always had a passion for teaching and teaching to kids in early age compared to teaching wine to adults. There is a huge difference there, but teaching needs to come from the heart as well. You have to have the best interest of the student at the forefront. What you're doing, you're teaching not to show off your knowledge, but to make people aware of something. And so you have to be open to answer all type of different questions, even those questions that are not relevant to the material that you're covering. But you have to guide the class through, WSET, you have 2-hour session and it's time. You can't just answer all those sort of questions. You kind of need to guide the class in a certain way. And the tasting part as well, it's very important when you are teaching, training students with no wine background to taste wine. That's where really you have to be careful not to, talk down or be too condescending. You have to train them. And if they make a mistake, you have to let them notice that probably with a second taste of the wine, things are a little bit different. You can't directly say, no, you're wrong. This is not medium plus acidity, or this is not tasting like blackberry. Is a white wine, so it should taste like citrus fruit or green fruit. You have to find a way. It's not easy and it's not immediate. It comes with time, with experience. So, I started teaching in 2018 and the style of teaching have changed massively since then.
You're passionate about demystifying wine. What's the biggest barrier people have when learning?
The feedback that I receive from students or customers in the restaurant is that some people tend to be too verbose, too technical. And I've worked with fantastic sommelier, and sometimes I will stop and listen to them. They talk with customer at the table, and they were so technical. I wonder how the customer can really understand that, because you can't just think that everyone got a wine technical knowledge. And so I've been taught a trick, especially in restaurants, 3 words. Describe the wine in 3 words and no more than that, because you're going to lose the attention of the guest and they're not going to relate and get bored. And plus, you have a limited time at the table. So describe the wine in 3 words and move on. And then, of course, if they ask you a question, if they're willing to talk with you, you can go deep. And the same with students. I can see some students, they like to dig deep in one particular side of a subject, but then maybe the other side of the class doesn't care. So you have to balance. The good thing is always to, okay, I'm going to answer this question, which is very interesting at the end of the class, because you're not going to be judged on this question that you ask in your exam. So we can talk about later. So that's always the good things to do.
So from that, what do you think makes a great wine class or an event in your eyes?
Well, obviously is that everyone is enjoying it. Everyone is interacting, asking questions. To me, when the class is sitting there and is silent, doesn't ask any question, is a bad sign. First, because I have an accent. So I always second guess, do they really understand what I'm trying to say? Or they're being nice and they say, okay, yep, no question, but they don't understand what I'm saying. And that's a bit of a worry. Second, obviously, be on time, because everyone's time is precious. And obviously, if you're running a WSET, you've got 2 hours. If you're running a wine event, obviously, the time at the table in a venue, it's limited. And most importantly, that is that everyone enjoyed it and they want to do it one more time. So the classic example was once I was teaching the entire level 2 by myself, from the first session to the exam, to Chinese students, but they really wanted to do it in English. And I was in a business where there was a Chinese educator, so they could have, and they rarely asked me questions. And so I was wondering, gosh, maybe they don't understand me, because there is a massive language barrier between us, obviously. But at the end, they all passed the exam. Some they did very well. So for me, it was a huge thing, because I was happy for them. Obviously, they all come back and buy wine. They were all very happy with the result. But also, I pat myself on the back. I was like, yep, I've done my job.
Congratulations on being a Len Evans Tutorial Scholar.
Thank you.
Can you tell the audience what it is and what was the experience like?
The Len Evans tutorial I've always considered as the pinnacle of the wine industry in Australia and all over the world. If you read Jancis Robinson article, she wrote about Len Evans tutorial many times. She was friend with Len Evans, and I think it's quite unique in its type. Personally, I'm not aware of any other wine school in the world with such high pedigree of wine tutors and importance is obviously a wine school for wine show judges. So initially started as a wine school that will help raise the bar of not just judging show in Australia, but also raise the bar of quality wine in Australia. So it was specifically aimed for active winemakers and show judges. But in times, as you can see, there have been people from the hospitality industry, sommelier taking part to it, winemakers, wine writer, wine educators, all sort of different wine figures in the industry. And it's a very intense, if I can put it in a very simple word, it is like a capital city wine show on steroids, because obviously you're tasting important wine, you're tasting with high profile people, and all the wine that you're tasting, they all won a medal at the major wine show, or they're classic wine from Europe and US. So you have to really think like a professional wine show judge, but in a different way, because you are judging high quality wine. So how do you judge an high quality wine that has won a gold medal to an Australian wine show and you give it a bronze? Well, you have to, because you have to put it in a contest with other 29 wine of the same grape variety, same style, but different ages. So it can be a bit difficult initially, but then you get the gist and you'll actually learn a lot. From the tutors, which are all legends of the wine industry, to the other students, because you all call to speak about the wine, tell the score, and your score needs to be very close, if not the same, of the panel of the tutors, if you want to be a DAX. But don't enter this school if you want to be a DAX, because that's not the aim at the end of the day. The aim to enter this school is to learn and to progress in the wine show judging. And if you're a winemaker, to tweak the style of your wines if you have to.
And what's the time frame on that?
To get into the school.
And your process within then?
There is an application process to that, which I don't think it's that difficult. I've applied to different scholarship and I found other scholarship application more difficult than this. It's about timing, consistency, and persistency. I wasn't accepted the first time. I was accepted after 9 times. So after 9 years, I'm not the only one. There are people that apply 10 times before getting in. The people that apply twice and they got in. I know someone that applied once and got in straight away. So it all depends, obviously, on your experience in the wine industry, on your intention in the wine industry, especially in the wine show judging. And obviously, when you are accepted in, it's already a big win. And in terms of the structure of the tutorial, over 5 days, and you live and breathe wine from the morning at breakfast until you go to bed. There is very little time for yourself. So you always have 1 or 2 classes to judge. So obviously you'll have a Chardonnay class where you judge classic Chardonnay from all over the world, Shiraz, Cabernet Sauvignon, and then you have 1 master class or 2, it depends on the day how it is structured every day. And in the master class, it's interesting because you have your usual panel of tutor plus a guest there. And for instance, we have a Wines masterclass. We had the winemaker and viticulturist from Wines, and we deep dive in all the intricacy of Coonawarra, the terroir of Coonawarra, the wines from Wines, and it was amazing to see Wines wine from back in the 60s up to these days. And you still call to talk about the score that you gave, but it's a little bit more informal and it's more for you to learn. The end, the last day, and that's all you have. It's almost the Mandela Romano Conti masterclass is left a session that you cover in the day on Friday, and it's quite unique in his type because obviously you got all the crews of the Mandela Romano Conti served blind. You don't know which are they. You have to guess the vintage, you have to guess the vineyard. It's incredible because you think, oh yes, I'm sure this is Romani Conti, or I'm sure this is Latache, but actually they're not. So whatever you think about the wine, you just throw it out of the window. And I think if I remember correctly, I guess 1 vineyard, and I was very close with the vintage, and another student guessed 4 vineyard, which we all thought it was an error there. But it's not that easy because how many times you drink DRC? Virtually never, or maybe if you're lucky, work in restaurants, someone buy a bottle and give you a taste. So it's a kind of, I don't know, it's kind of you're visiting a sacred temple, and you have to enter observe in silence, don't touch anything, and go back and treasure whatever you barely observe and touch. That's how I felt.
That makes me feel a lot better. I'm involved in many wine clubs, informal ones, and we do, blind tastings. And yeah, it is so difficult just to pick something being led from nothing. But I always found you have options. You can eliminate 1 out of 4. It's amazing then how that can narrow you to a better result rather than the overwhelming just trying to pick a wine and vintage from the ether.
Yes, and every night for dinner we used to have those wine option games. We had lots of wine at night. After all day judging and talking about wine, you have more than 20 wine, and they were all served blind, and the MC of the night will guide you through the option game. But that was so fun because they give you option, and you have a very limited time. You couldn't speed out, so you have to be careful not to get drunk straight away because otherwise the fun is ends. But I really, really enjoyed because then the first night we were kind of a bit shy, we weren't sure, and so someone said you have to let it go, just enjoy the process and try to learn, have fun. And so from the second night onwards I could see the competitiveness of the things between us, and we became competitive in a good way because we were also having fun. I kind of enjoyed everything from the tutorial obviously, and the drinks that you have at the end of the night, and the relationship that you build as students, talk with each other, scholars, I should say, not students. And we're going to meet each other around the traps in other wine show. And it's like when you got your friends and you had a memorable experience with them, you'll remember for years and years.
Finally, what's one piece of advice for someone looking to follow in your footsteps?
You need to be a bit crazy to do what I've done. So really, sometimes I follow my instinct. So you need to have a good dose of instinct. You need to be ready to fall and stand back and move on and have fun along the process. I had bad moments where I really thought, that's it, I'm done. I'm going to change industry. I'm going to go back to my family. And I have a very small but mighty village of people that actually bring me up every time. So surround yourself with good people. You don't need lots of people in your circle, but very good people that always give you a reason to keep going and believe in yourself and your capabilities. So once you find the things that you know that it's for you, like in my case is writing, stick with that, even if the world is saying to you, no, just stick with that and go on, because you'll get there.
Lisa, thank you so much for sharing your journey, your insights and your passion with us. It's been such a pleasure diving into your world of wine, writing and education. But before we let you go, we like to finish things on a lighter note with a quick segment I call Half Glass Full. It's fun, it's fast, and it's all about first instincts. Just short answers, whatever comes to mind. Are you ready to play? Red or white?
White.
Tuscany or Yarra Valley?
Tuscany.
Sommelier shift or writing a deadline?
Writing a deadline.
Favorite wine word?
Fragrant.
Most overused wine word?
Delicious.
Most underrated varietal?
Semillon.
Go-to guilty pleasure wine?
Fortified wine.
Wine judging, is it a thrill or pressure?
Both.
Most read wine book on your shelf?
Jancis Robinson book.
One word to describe your palate?
Selective.
Pinot Grigio or Pinot Noir?
Pinot Noir.
Your ultimate food and wine pairing?
Chocolate and Pedro Jimenez.
What's harder, writing or teaching?
Teaching.
Lisa, that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you for being such a thoughtful, honest and fun guest. From Tuscany to Melbourne, the wine world is clearly better with your voice in it, and we can't wait to see what you do next. Thanks again, Lisa. Cheers.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Behind the Wines. A huge thank you for joining us. Your support means everything. Like a good wine, the best stories are meant to be shared. So make sure you subscribe on your favourite podcast platform, leave a comment, and let us know your thoughts on our socials. And go to our website for some more stories, special offers, upcoming events, and exclusive content. And special thanks to PS Wine Selections for your ongoing support. Until next time, cheers.